That's Genesis. Invisible Touch from 1986. You're listening to Scott Phoebe on Over to You, HCR 104 FM. We're joined this evening by our very own money man, Victor Sachs. Good evening, Victor.
Good evening, Scott. Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. How you doing?
Yeah, very well, very well.
How's the world of high finance?
Yes, interesting. And I was going to say, how's the world of accountancy, given Tesco's announcement today? So
I know, isn't that terrible? 250. How can you lose 250 million pounds?
I genuinely do not know and don't wish to know.
Well, it'll be interesting to see the outcome of that.
Yes.
I think they've got Deloitte's involved, haven't they? To try and uncover what's happened.
Indeed.
Anyway, we'll watch this space.
Yes, yes.
Now, we're going to speak on the first part of the show, we're going to be speaking with Victor about what I would imagine is quite a hot topic over the last few years, debt management. Obviously, the recession of 2008 is continuing to bite in many families' pockets, and although we hear things are getting better, it doesn't really feel that way sometimes, does it?
No, it's true, and you know, given what we've seen this last week in terms of Scotland's reform, it was interesting to see or hear a minister to say, right, that's done, now we've got to get back to doing the day-to-day things. And the first thing he said was, we have to help people repay the loans, the bills, the debts, and get them to manage their money, and that's our job, and this is where we start. And I was quite taken by that, because we've seen in recent years, you know, people getting phone calls regarding debt management, consolidating things, etc., etc. Now we're getting phone calls for payment protection insurance. We now get phone calls for accidents that we have or haven't had, and suddenly the idea of debt has just gone, or put to the back burner. It's not making the front pages as it once was. It is still there, it is still an issue, and I guess my thing is, when I see a client, and all financial advisors will be doing this, I have some money to invest, fantastic. Question 1, how long can you put this aside for? Question 2, let's have a look at your income and outgoings. And we're duty bound to establish, can this person invest for that period of time, but more importantly, are there any monies owed? And if that person owes money, how much interest are you being charged? If the interest being charged is 3% and someone wants a very cautious investment where they can see that they can get 4 or 5%, well, then there's a discussion to be had. Hang on, I can invest my money and get more interest or growth than I'm getting on my money, or than I'm paying for it. So should I? It's a good question. Should I invest? But when someone has got a credit card or a personal loan where it's 10, 15, 29%, 30%, you have to make that judgment call and say, look, I think you're better off putting monies this way. I would say the most important thing, I mean, should anyone be in that situation, and we know the statistics say there are, and sometimes, what I'm seeing is that debt has now moved to 40, 50, 60, 70-year-olds, as they now financially help children and grandchildren. And unfortunately, they're blessed with the we should know better view internally, in themselves. This is what they say, and therefore they feel a little bit embarrassed to go and ask for help or assistance, so long as they're helping the children and the grandchildren. You know, as we've said, 2008 was a very torrid time for a lot of people. So debt shift has moved. The first thing someone's got to do, and you can't make someone do that, is to wake up and say, yeah, actually, there is an issue here.
Yeah.
The phone calls are coming, the banks are calling, the banks and building societies and credit card companies, the loan companies, they know what's happening, and they actually want to help. As crazy or as absurd as that may seem, they want to help, but they can't do anything unless someone puts in that phone call.
I think that's the first thing, isn't it?
It
for
is.
the individual concerned, if they feel as though they have a problem, is not to bury their head in the sand, which some people perhaps naturally do because they want the problem to go away, but
Absolutely.
it won't go away.
No, unfortunately.
So it's a question of
it
sort
won't.
of facing up to the problem and trying to put a plan together to try and get through it, really.
It is, and banks, buildings. I say it all. If you put that call in and say, look, I'm either going in, I can see that there's a collision that's going to happen, or I'm in something and I need some help, then they are in the place where they can say, right, fine, hang on a second, We can stop the phone calls. You've made contact with us. Thank you very much. Now let's go through things. Now you can either do this to every company that you owe some money to. It's sit down, make the phone call and do, or you can contact, say, Citizens Advice Bureau, Credit Consumer Counselling Service, or CCCS, or other helpers and providers who you can actually liaise direct with them, and they can actually liaise and help with those companies that someone owes money to. And 9 out of 10, there will be an agreement as to how much someone can pay, and they can slowly but surely eradicate the debt that they've got themselves into.
So I think the lender, if you approach them and if you like, inform them of your predicament, your difficult circumstances, 99 times out of 100, I would imagine the lender would have some sympathy, and as long as you're putting together some kind of plan of action, they would support you.
Absolutely, and the sooner someone can do that, then the better a bank or builder society or whoever it is can work with. We've seen over the last few years the introduction of individual voluntary arrangements or IVAs. And the thing with an IVA or someone putting themselves into a situation where they're bankrupt, which is basically you owe more than what you actually have in terms of assets, the thing is the house can be classed as an asset. And an IVA may put that house at risk as they look to say, well, you owe this, you've got that, this is our job. So rather than go down that extreme decision of an IVA, which can hang around for a number of years after you've done that on a credit footprint, a credit rating agency as they're called, but it's your credit footprint that you're leaving behind. An IVA is very much a last resort, and as you said, Scott, 9 out of 10 times, if you can just contact the people that you owe money to, they will ask for some income details and expenditure details. Their job is to ensure that you can pay back what you're committed to pay back without causing you any further financial difficulties.
Well, let's talk about credit card debt, because there are some deals where you can transfer debt from a credit card where you're paying interest to another credit card that gives you a certain 0% period. Is that right?
Yeah, it's interesting. There clearly is an appetite for credit card companies to put their heads above the parapet again and say, we're offering a 0% on the transfer.
Sometimes they charge on the amount that the balance you transfer over, is that right?
Yes, and so the ones I'm seeing at the moment, somewhere between 1.5 and 2.5% is being charged. Now, this may offer someone who still has a good credit rating. Hey, in other words, when that footprint is looked at through companies such as Experian or Equifax, to name but two, and anyone can go and look at their credit report. All these companies will give you a 3 months trial to go and view, and then obviously if you don't wish to continue, make sure once you've got all the information you cancel it, because otherwise they will debit your account each month. But you can look at your footprint. Normally 1.5, 2.5% being charged, but when you're looking at maybe your current credit card interest rate, which is 20%, 25%, to pay 2.5 on the balance, to then transfer it across, and some deals I'm seeing, Scott, 2 years.
Really?
Interest free. So you look at that and say, well, this creates a breathing barrier. So if you're used to paying a couple of £100 a month off your credit card, and actually when you look at it each month, you're only knocking it down by £50 or £60, this is £200 off your credit card allowance. The discipline has to be that you're not going to go out and spend again.
Add to it.
Yeah.
But also you must at least pay the minimum payments each month, because my understanding is that if you miss one of those monthly minimum repayments, then the 0% deal goes out of the window.
Absolutely. And this is, the 0% deal is great if someone can handle it, or even if it does give you that, a bit of breathing space that you need. A 0% balance transfer, as you said, we're going to pay a couple of percent to bring it across, but it's a lot better than the 24%. But what is going to be looked at is your history with that existing credit card, plus the usual things of how long have you been at your current address, what's your work like, have you got a bank account to begin with, and there'll be various pointers that credit companies use as to see whether or not you score enough, as it were. And what I will add on now and just sort of say, people are out there there are companies out there, all creditors are out there, banks, building societies, loan companies. They're there to help you purchase what you want to purchase. But they are there to help if you are in a bit of a quandary, but they cannot see through that telephone. All they can do is make the phone calls and send you the letters. Please, if anyone is in that situation, you can email the studio if you want to get, contact through myself, or best, if you can do it, to pick up the phone and admit that, there is an issue. Going on to, then on the other side of debt management, is how you can use credit in your favour. And as we've said, there's 0%. So if you're going to spend a bit of purchase on £1,000 and you've got £1,000 in an ISA or a bank account or an individual savings account or a 60-day notice account, and that's earning 1% interest, well, why not put £1,000 on the interest free, and at the end of your 1 year, if that's what it's going to take you, you might be 10 or 15 or 20 pounds better off, because your £1,000 has earned interest, but you've not been charged any interest to borrow.
Sure.
So any opportunity where someone has a few £1,000s and they're looking to make that purchase and they're thinking of doing a cash deal, just stop and have a look and see, is there a zero interest credit card, or is there some zero interest loans that they can do with the company that they're looking to purchase from, and do that. And on a bigger basis, you can look at, my family in the States have all got credit cards that will award hotel points, and such is the nature of what they do, that they will spend, pay off. They could end up with free flights, free hotel accommodation, just for the power of using the rewards that are being on offer. So debt management comes in two forms. One, the more common that we know about in terms of managing that debt, but secondly, it is, well, actually, if it's a good enough interest deal, and 2% being charged, can you get better than 2% on your money? Yeah, and without taking any major risks or experiencing any roller coaster rides. Yeah, possible, and therefore worth a discussion with an independent financial advisor, rather than going into the route of saying, okay, here's the cash, let's go.
Okay. All right, Victor, that's great. Thanks very much. We're going to have to take a short break for some ads and a bit of music, and we'll be back with Victor in a few minutes' time. All right, we're back with Victor. It's just coming up to 7:30. We're talking about debt management this evening. There are sort of various forms of debt now. I guess we talked about credit card debt, but there's loans. What about payday loans and things? There's all these kind of adverts and things that you see on the TV these days. Quite a useful... they've had a lot of bad press, but it seems to me that they get bad press from sort of rich people that don't need to use them. I mean, if you're stuck in a predicament and you need money, let's say, to fix your car, banks aren't lending money at the moment. You haven't got a credit card, potentially. So where do you go? As long as you manage the relationship with the payday lender, then it can be a useful means to credit, I guess.
I think all the credit options that are available to us at this moment in time, in the right hands, managed correctly, absolutely fine. And if someone is looking at this, they go in, eyes open, never mind looking left and looking right once, you do it 2, 3, 4 times, and you're watching every step, that's when it's fine. And then you're treating this with the respect it is. A payday loan, a week's extension of monies, generally, maybe 2 weeks, depending on who we're looking at. It all seems very simple and very easy. The problem becomes when someone's using that as a salary extension. And they're turning a 4-week payday month into a 5-week. And in the next month, they've got to take a little bit more out to start repaying. And that cuts them a little bit short, and so the snowball effect happens.
Spiral kind of thing.
From a tiny little snowball to a massive avalanche. And if people tend to think that, rich people don't get it, I have seen a mergers and acquisitions lawyer have a number of payday loans. Because this person only got paid if 2 companies agreed to the buy and the sell. And that's where this person made their money. And if it didn't happen, she didn't get paid. So it's not just a question of aiming at various different people, those with or without money. Anyone can fall into that, and like you say, if we've got in my head, I'm thinking of maybe a person who's self-employed. The car is, you've mentioned the car. The car is their livelihood. They need £300-400 to fix it so they can continue earning money. And if that person's got nowhere else to go, then it's quite feasible that they will look at that situation. But as I say, buyer beware. You've got asset finance now, where if this said van driver owns that van, he can now lend on the strength of the residue value of that asset. So almost anyone saying, well, my van's worth £10,000, and an asset company will say, well, we'll give you £5,000. And so it's almost anything that you own can be pawned, for a want of a better word. I would always just turn around and say, before you complete forms, the majority of these will say seek advice. Do so. They put on their seek advice for a reason. Whether that is, there are debt management specialists out there that will talk you through and give you a free 30-minute, 40-minute consultation. And I know I'll keep saying it, but hey, I'm here. There's independent financial advisors that would give gladly a 3 hours consultation and talk people through what to do it. Everything is fine. Anything that you're looking at is fine, so long as you know what you're getting into, what the possible outcomes may be, what the repayments will look like, how much interest you're being charged, how much is it going to cost you to borrow this amount of money. And at least if you do go forward, you do so with an informed decision, rather than thinking irrationally, which is normally, I like it, I want it, I need it, I now need the money, or I've got to do it, so yes, I have to do it. And that's the thing. I will come back here a little bit. Banks are very slowly starting to open up their treasure chests of money. It's not amazingly, but it's starting to happen.
Yeah. All right. Now, you mentioned IVAs earlier on. If someone's in a position where they've exhausted all other avenues,
yes,
and they find maybe they've lost their job, I don't know, they're in up the creek without a paddle, shall we say?
Yes.
Now, what are their options? What is an IVA? How does an individual go about obtaining this arrangement? And just explain to us a little bit about what they are.
Of course. An IVA, or individual voluntary arrangement, is where you would seek help of a management company and a brokerage firm that would specialise in debt management. And when I mean debt management in this case, I mean managing your debt, and act on your behalf to come to an agreement with with the creditors that you have. The idea behind an IVA is to look at your assets, and that can include a house, depending upon the situation. That no one wants to make anyone homeless, especially if
there's children involved.
You've got it. There is the responsibility on the lender, and responsibility on the individual voluntary arrangement company, or the company doing this, as to how far down the line do we go. At the end of the day, the ruling is fairly straightforward in terms of are you refusing to pay, yes or no? If you are, well then that's refusing to pay or acknowledge anything creates a more legal issue. The ability to say, look, I want to help, I want to try and sort this out and work around this, is the more favourable option. And if someone has left it far too late, they've not made contact with creditors, we're now starting to get letters coming through, although in what we've seen recently is the letters that come through saying this is now being handed over to a debt management company may not be happening. There's been a recent publication to say actually this was just another letter that we had in our armoury to send to make someone stand up. But as we've said earlier, just don't let it get to that point in time.
Yeah.
So the IVA company, the individual voluntary arrangement company, and we'll refer to it as IVA because individual voluntary arrangement is quite a mouthful, will work on your behalf and talk to the creditors and work out how much in the pound is affordable and payable. Can you pay 100%? 80%, 75, 50,
Okay,
etc., etc.
so they have the ability, if you like, to do a deal, so to speak, with the creditors.
To a point, at the end of the day, it's a very strict legal process that takes place.
Yeah.
It can affect, if, for example, you qualified during this time for payment protection insurance. Let's say you actually took it out on a personal loan, and actually it was found that if you were sick or ill or whatever the causes were, it would have never paid anyway, and they find in your favour and they pay you £2 or £3 or £4 or £5,000 whilst you're undergoing this individual voluntary arrangement. That can be brought into the equation. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to come to you. So it goes to that debt management company first, who then decide how much, if any, you will get.
I see.
And they will manage their money, the situation. They've got the power to talk to employers. They've got the power to reach into your bank account before you get that money to ensure that the agreed amount of money that you've decided that's been agreed is paid. And then even when it's finished, it can linger on your financial footprint or credit report for 3, 5, 7 years, depending upon what's going on. So it doesn't just affect the here and now, but it can affect someone going forward. So the IVA is IVA or bankruptcy, where you hold your hands up and say, I've got no money, I'm declaring myself bankrupt.
They're different, aren't they?
There is a subtle difference, and I'm not qualified enough and in debt management and as a solicitor to actually turn around and explain the nuances. Suffice to say, there are differences between those two contracts. And if you've exhausted or left it too late to come into negotiation with creditors, then you need to talk to Citizens Advice Bureau, Credit Consumer Counsel Service, or a solicitor to help you manage through and actually work out what route is best for you.
Yeah, okay, all right. So the bottom line, if anyone is faced with debt issues that they can't handle, most people, I guess, muddle through and they pay the loan repayments and the mortgage payments and the minimum payments on the credit cards or whatever. But if you're finding yourself where you're falling behind, the advice that you're giving, the main thing is to hold your hand up, contact the creditor involved, whether it's the credit card company or the loan company or the mortgage provider. Admit that you're entering a problem or you face a problem, and then 9 times out of 10 they will be able to help you work your way through it. That's the key bit of advice, really.
Totally. And even if you feel, for whatever reason, as we're saying, we're seeing this debt shift to the people born in the 50s and the 60s, and it's felt in this self-perpetuating we should know better. That they're not saying anything. And even if you can bring yourself to talk to a friend, a colleague, your children, your grandchildren, whatever it is, just to talk to someone, because they will know what to do. To pick up the phone and say, look, this is it. And once you do that, when I'm working with clients, you actually see their shoulders drop. And this big relief has just happened. They've finally admitted that there is an issue. And it's not that though the banks or loan companies don't know. Of course they know, because you're missing payments.
And the problem won't go away.
No, they won't just go, oh, do you know what, we'll just give up on this. It's only a few £100. Yeah. They're 9 years and 3 months into a 10-year contract. We'll write off the last 7 months, 6 months, 5 months, whatever. No, it's a legally binding contract. And they will do their damnedest to speak to you, and that's why you get all them phone calls and write to you, and that's why you get those letters. They need to speak to you, and you turn around and say, Houston, we've got a problem. Almost they can breathe a sigh of relief, because finally they've got you, and you can breathe a sigh of relief, because now together you can go forward and plot how you get yourself out of it.
All right. Brilliant. Thank you for that, Victor.
No
wise words. Now you've got someone listening in America. You mentioned you've got family in America.
I have got my cousins in New Jersey. They promised me faithfully they'll be listening. They might even be watching this on the webcam. So
okay.
I have no idea.
This is for your cousin, because he's New Jersey. I'm a big Springsteen fan. So
Lord, he's going to be very happy.
I want to play Atlantic City just for your cousin, Victor.
Thank you.
Here we go. You're listening to Scott Phoebe, and over to you, 7:46 on this Monday evening. We're with our very own money man, Victor Sachs. We're going to speak in this last part of the show, Victor, a little bit about ISAs. Now,
Yeah.
let's start at basics.
Yeah.
What is an ISA?
All right, so from my perspective now, we've assessed that there is no debt. Now we're all there.
Now we've got a bit of money
We've
to
paid it off,
yeah.
and now we've got some money there. An individual savings account. We've seen in the past, we've gone from tax-exempt special savings accounts. Remember TESAs?
I do remember Tesla.
Yeah, and then there was the TESA-only ISA. So when this matured, when your TESA matured, you could then put it into an individual savings account, but it was for TESAs only. So then you had that. And then, even before that, we had personal equity plans, or PEPs. So an individual savings account is an account where you can invest your money. You will be predominantly free of income tax, capital gains
So
tax.
this is different from, let's say, a normal savings account where you would pay tax on your interest.
If we're looking at a cash-based, walking into the said bank, High Street Bank or High Street Building Society, cash ISA will be free of income tax, capital gains tax, and there is no requirement or need to disclose cash held within an ISA
Or the interest received.
or the interest received
Yeah.
on a self-assessment tax return.
Sure.
So very, very good tax-saving vehicle.
And now there are limits, aren't there, as to how much cash you can deposit each financial year into an ISA?
Yes. Into an ISA, although, it's now a NISA, isn't it? But an ISA, as it stands, the individual savings account right now, there is a limit of £15,000.
And that's gone up quite substantially, I think, hasn't it?
Yes. Previous limits were around the 11,000 mark and 11,180, and you would have only been able to have held half of that in a cash individual savings account.
Right.
The other half you would needed to have invested it in stocks and shares.
I see. Okay. All right.
Or you could have put the full allowance into stocks and shares. But such was the cry and such was the demand that actually Richard felt, why should we be biased towards stocks and shares? If someone wants to put £15,000 into a cash individual savings account, they should be able to.
Okay. And you mentioned NISAs.
Well, this is the NISA. This is the new
that's what it
individual
stands for.
savings account.
Got you.
So
Okay.
the idea that you now have a receptacle that can hold £15,000, it could be £14,999 in cash and £1 in a stock and share investment, or the other way around, or any combination. The rules of the road are still that if you are under the age of 18, and over 16, you can only hold a cash based ISA. You cannot get involved with the investments of stocks and shares until you are at least 18.
Right. Okay.
But what we also have under the individual savings account, and again, you can see that my industry loves three-letter acronyms. We have the Financial Conduct Authority, which is FCA. We've just heard about individual voluntary arrangements, IVA. We now have individual savings accounts, ISA. So forgive me if it's all initials and acronyms, but that's what we're blessed with. So there is a JISA, a JISA, a junior individual savings account, and I have one for my 3-year-old where we're able to recycle his child benefit. We're in a fortunate position where our child benefit can be invested for him. And Noah will see that when he's 18. But between now and then, we can take his child benefit, we can invest it through the stock market, or you can invest it in a cash deposit account.
Yeah.
A junior ISA will not mature until child is 18.
So you can't get hold of the money.
On his part, no. That's we've decided. My wife and I have decided that's for him.
Yeah.
That will make some help and assistance somewhere.
When he goes to university or whatever.
Yeah, God willing, or maybe
buy a car. Or
yes, or maybe even decides to become an independent financial advisor. I have no idea.
And is there a limit as to how much you can invest into this junior ISA each year?
Yes, it's half the current ISA allowance. So it allows for, if grandparents want to make gifts to their grandchildren, if parents want to make gifts, etc., etc., there is another tax advantageous investment that is a junior ISA. I say tax advantageous because if someone wants to invest into the stocks and shares element, there is a tiny bit of tax credit which will be applied to that investment, and we can't get around it. So it's not 100% tax free.
Just for my benefit, just because this is something I don't understand.
That's okay.
Noah,
Yeah,
is your son,
yes.
right? Noah doesn't pay. He doesn't earn any money.
No.
So if he opened what was a normal savings account at the bank and
Yeah.
he received interest on that,
Yeah.
that you used to fill in a form and send it to the bank saying, I'm not earning any money, therefore please don't deduct tax from my interest.
Yeah, but if the interest is more than £100 on that element, then it comes back to parents.
Oh, I see.
So even because people get, I'll put a load of money into my kid's name.
Yeah.
And whilst a child has a personal allowance, everyone has this personal allowance.
Yeah.
But if interest earned exceeds a certain amount, then that interest needs to be, in the fullness, needs to be declared and put on a tax return form that actually it's my under 16-year-old or my 8-year-old earns £200 interest. Actually, the £100 is classed as a paid interest by the parent.
I see.
But
okay.
the investment element of a junior ISA, or indeed the investment element of a stock and share ISA, there is a very small amount of tax credit, which is on dividend tax credit, which is 10%, which cannot be reclaimed and is applied to the investment. So whilst it's free of tax in your hands, as the investment is growing, there is a very small element of tax that is deducted.
Now, if someone is interested in opening an ISA themselves or one of these junior ISAs, is it a question of just walking into their local bank, or
you can go to the bank. I mean, or make, if you're looking at, if we've got people out there saying, do you know what, I just want a deposit account, then use the websites that are out there. I mean, obviously we've got High Street, and in Huntingdon we're blessed with pretty much every possible lender being there, offering their wares. And indeed, there are some banks out there now that really want your money. They might be paying, they're paying a really good rate of return. Okay, it may only be on £1,000 or a couple of £1,000. What they're buying is another name and another address. So your post box is about to be bombarded with envelopes offering you car insurance, buildings and contents, other bank accounts and products, but they've got someone else to mail to for the next 12 months, and after which they'll probably knock down the interest rate that they were giving you. But if you're, shop around, use the well-known websites, Compare the Market, Martin's Money are two websites. Other websites are available where you can go and have a look at a moment's glance.
See what interest rates are.
Cambridge Building Society, maybe the Saffron Walden Building Society. There's some small niche building societies that are now offering possibly some real good returns. If it's just, I want to put this money into cash. If you're using a junior ISA and you want to use that stock and share element, or you want to try and earn more than the 1 or 2% that's being offered, then naturally I'd recommend you speak to an independent financial advisor, and you can go to unbiased.co.uk or look at the Chartered Insurance Institute CII website and list your postcode, and they'll be able to tell you the nearest IFAs to you. So IFAs, Independent Financial Advisor, yet another 3-letter acronym, to help you through that maze of where do I invest my money in as most tax smart a way as possible. All right,
brilliant. We've run out of time, unfortunately, Victor, but thank you for all that. It goes very quickly. Thanks for all your advice. Next month, the fourth Monday of the month, we're going to be speaking a little bit more about savings, but also about investments.
Indeed. I'm obviously don't want to be drawn into where should I and what should I, but I'm happy to talk about what the potentials are.
Yeah.
And if we akin it to a flight of stairs, how high up the stairs do you want to go? There's a bit of a way down as well. But we'll talk more about investments next month.
Fantastic. All right, Victor. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Scott.